أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد أخذ القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أإذ ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين صدق الله العظيم.
MashaAllah, Brother Tayyib. Thank you. I will now invite Brother Murtaza Naqvi for further recitation of the Quran. Salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجل يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وعنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادة وادخلي جنة. صدق الله العلي العظيم. I swear by the daybreak and the 10 nights, and the even and the odd, and the night when it departs. Truly in that there is an oath for those who possesses understanding. Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with Ad, the people of Aram, possessors of lofty buildings, the like of which were not created in other cities, and with Samud who hewed out the rocks in the valley, and with Pharaoh, the Lord of hosts, who committed inordinacy in the cities, so they made great mischief therein. Therefore your Lord let down upon them a portion of the chastisement. Most surely your Lord is watching. And as for a man, when his Lord tries him, then treats him with honor and makes him lead an easy life, he says, my Lord honors me. But when he tries him differently, then straightens to him his means of subsistence, he says, my Lord has disgraced me. Nay, but you do not honor the orphan, nor do you urge one another to feed the poor. And you eat away the heritage, devouring everything indiscriminately. And you love wealth with exceeding love. Nay, when the earth is made to crumble to pieces, and the Lord comes and also the angels in ranks, and hell is made to appear on that day. On that day shall man be mindful, and what shall being mindful then avail him? He says, oh, would that I had sent before for this my life. But on that day shall no one chastise with anything like his chastisement, and no one shall bind with anything like his binding. O soul that art at rest, return to your Lord, well pleased with him, well pleasing him. So enter among my servants, and enter into my garden. Salawat.
Jazakallah, thank you Murtaza. I will now invite Brother Sayyid Ali Akbar for Ziyarat al-Shura. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيره، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور، السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله ممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله، إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية غاطبا، ولعن الله ابن مرجان، ولعن الله عمر بن السعد، ولعن الله الشمراء، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك بأبي أنت وأمي. لقد عظم مصابي بك، فاسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني تلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله، إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم، وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن صالمكم، وحرب لمن حاربكم، وولي لمن والاكم، وعدو لمن عاداكم. فاسألوا الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقنا البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني تلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يؤتي مصابا بمصيبته، مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد، اللعين ابن اللعين، على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله، في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية، عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضائف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب العليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر طاب له ولا ذلك. اللهم لعن الإصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا، اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت ولا الظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا ثم العن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانه وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم، الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين أصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا محجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. صلوات.
Jazakallah. Thank you, brother Sayyid Ali Akbar. I will now invite brother Muhammad Shah for salam. Salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The chain whips awaken 100 eyes on their backs. Red tears trail the streets to the gold-domed tomb of Hussein. A golden spider with legs of blood. Whales shake the sky, the minaret props. But today for every lash for Hussein, a lash will tear for a warded son. Through the veil of sorrow does history trace two matchless martyrs, our prophet's pets, who left their hearths with Islamic grace. In hunger and thirst their duty to face, severed from home, exhausted on the field, opposed by enemies who had Satan's shield. They gave their lives that others be freed from falsehood, tyranny, and a kafir's creed. Most precious blood flowed from their veins. Battlefield of Karbala has still those stains. From our hearts should rush rivers of blood, renewing our faith with this vital flood. Men weep for you today in many lands, and on their breasts in bitter anguish beat, and in sad mournful tunes the tales repeat of how you lost your family upon the sands. You nobly spurned the tyrant's base demands and chose death to prevent your soul's defeat, became a martyr with unflinching feet. For these well may one weep who understands the sorrow at your death, despite the years is still as fresh, which time has failed to quell. In every heart of this day new pain appears, and of your sufferings men each other tell. They see a vision through slow falling tears of that lone battle where athirst you fell. Black-robed, barefooted, with dim eyes that rain wild tears in memory of thy woeful plight, and hands that in blind rhythmic anguish smite their blood-stained bosoms to sad refrain from the old haunting legion of thy pain. Thy votaries mourneth thee through the tragic night, with mystic dirge and melancholy rite, crying to thee, Hussein, Hussein, why doth thy myriad lovers so lament? Sweet saint, is not thy matchless martyrhood the living banner and brave covenant of the high creed thy prophet did proclaim, bequeathing for the world's beatitude the enduring loveliness of Allah's name? Out of the somber shadow, over the sunlit grass, slow in a sad procession, the shadowy pageants pass. Mournful, majestic, and solemn, stricken and pale and dumb, crowned in their peerless anguish, the sacred martyrs come. Hark from the brooding silence, breaks the wild cry of pain, wrung from the heart of the ages. Ali, Hasan, Hussein, come from this tomb of shadows, come from this tragic shrine that throbs with the deathless sorrow of a long dead martyr line. Love, let the living sunlight kindle your splendid eyes, ablaze with the steadfast triumph of the spirit that never dies. So may the hope of new ages comfort the mystic pain that cries from the ancient silence. Ali, Hasan, Hussein. Salawat.
Jazakallah, thank you, Brother Muhammad. I will now invite Brother Ali Naqvi, Brother Sajjad Rizvi, Brother Ali Zaman, and Brother Murtaza Naqvi for Marsiya. Salawat.
Surah Fatiha. दुश्मन को भी खुदा ना दिखाए पिसर का दाग, दिल को फिगार करता है नूरे नजर का, आँखों का नूर खोता है नूरे बसर का दाग, मरना जवान बेटे का है उम्र भर का दाग, मरना जवान बेटे का है उम्र भर। और ये हाल इब्ने फातिमा के दिल से पूछिए, ज़ख्म जिगर के दर्द को घायल से पूछिए, और जब बर्छी खा के गुम हुआ अकबर सानो निहार, और फर्जंदे फातिमा का कहूँ किस्सा से हार, और लर्जा था जिसमें पाक में खुर्शीद की मिसाल, और चिल्लाते थे शहीद हुआ हाय मेरा लाल, और थामे हुए कलेज का घबराए फिरते थे, और एक एक कदम पाथो करे खा के गिरते थे, और आँखों में अश्क लपा फुगा और दिल में दर्द, हाथों में राशा चेहराए अक़दस का रंग ज़र, और सदमे से हाथ पाँव कभी गर्म कभी सर्द, और मिसले कमा कमीदा मगर गेसुओं पगर, और देखी जो कोई लाश तो گھبرا کے گر پڑے جلدی کبھی چلے کبھی گش کھا کے گر پڑے ہر دم پکارتے تھے کہ اکبر کدھر گئے اے نور چشم بانوئے بے پر کدھر گئے مرتا ہے باپ اے میرے دل پر کدھر گئے آواز دو شبیہ پیغمبر کدھر گئے اے میرے شیر کیا کسی جنگل میں چھپ گئے اے میرے چاند کیا کسی دل میں چھپ گئے بیٹا پکار لو کہ بہت بے قرار ہوں بے کس ہوں بے وطن ہوں غریب و دیار ہوں اہل ستم تو ہنستے ہیں میں اشک بار ہوں آفت میں مبتلا ہوں بلا سے دو چار ہوں آفت میں مبتلا ہوں بلا سے دو چار ہوں بولو پیدر سے تشنا دہانی کا واسطہ صورت دکھاؤ اپنی جوانی صورت دکھاؤ اپنی جوانی کا واسطہ دشمن کو بھی خدا نہ صلوات
صلوات Just two quick announcements to make. Number one, Slido, the date for the Q&A has been decided. It will be Friday night after the Majlis. So for those of you who are not on the Slido Q&A page yet, you may scan, the TV is not up anymore. You may come to me or Brother Fazl Naqvi after the Majlis and we will add you to the English WhatsApp group chat in which the code for the Slido is present. We thank all the sponsors who have helped make this English program possible and all other English programs possible. If you would like to donate, please come see either me or Brother Ali Naqvi after the Majlis and we will provide you the instructions on donations. Also, the annual fundraiser night on the 9th of Muharram is taking place. You can scan the code underneath the podium here for information on that fundraiser. You are requested to bring checks. Your donations are greatly appreciated. There was a request from a member of the community. Farhan Uncle's son Ali Mohsin Rizvi is ill and the family has requested dua. Let us all recite Ayat Karima for his health. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ مُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ يَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ 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 إِذَا دَعَاهُ يَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. I will now invite our guest scholar, Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, to the minbar. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last night we attempted to explain a little bit about this ilm al-mantiq, this idea of something being logical or rational, especially according to the science of logic. And we talked about how there are a lot of different proofs for God, although we don't have to always be defensive about it. Sometimes we don't have to give a proof. It's the rest of the world which is denying God, which is the most obvious thing in human history. So we don't have to be so shy and ashamed about this idea, even if we don't know these proofs. But we said there are proofs there, just so that we can strengthen, hopefully, our iman a little bit. So we started last night with the simplest type of argument that exists. That's called a teleological argument, or an argument by design, that talks about the idea of how the universe, because of the way that it's designed and ordered, this shows that there has to be a designer that we end up calling God or Allah. And we went through the two basic premises for that, which was that number one, this universe has order and design, which we said is no different than just saying that there's cause and effect here. That's it. So if somebody wants to say that, well, there's evil that happens, or this is not a great design, like, okay, you can not like the design, that's fine, but that means it's still designed. Even a bad design still means that there's order. Right? There's still a system of cause and effect. So that premise is good. The second one was that anytime we observe and experience order and design, or cause and effect, we know that there's some designer, some orderer, somebody putting this in place. And we showed examples that sometimes accidents do happen. That's true. Sometimes we don't intend something and you get something that seems like it's complicated or complex. That does happen. But the more and more variables you add, the more and more complex you get, the more impossible it comes that you can do that accidentally. So when we're talking about having this universe from quote-unquote nothing, which inshallah we'll talk about a little bit more tonight. When we talk about starting from the Big Bang, or starting from a few forces of the universe, or starting from one, single cellular organism, and then coming to insan, to human beings, with morality and all of this stuff, we say, look, this is not showing us that this is all happening accidentally, right? This necessitates that there's somebody that's pushing all of this and put everything in motion, so that one cause leads to one effect, that effect leads to another effect, and it keeps going on until we get to this life that we have right now. That's what our rationality and logic tells us, and it's the opposite that requires proof. If somebody wants to say that all this is accidental or random, okay, well, you got to prove that then. We shouldn't have to prove anything, you prove the opposite, because reality, cause, effect, science, everything else is so far on our side. Now, we also said that sometimes people, they object and say, well, we can talk about the Big Bang. And the Big Bang says that, well, there's this random explosion that happened in the beginning of the universe, and that explains everything. We don't need a God, it was just a Big Bang that happened, and that's it. So we want to try to find out tonight, inshallah, since a few did request that we go through this topic, or the subtopic, does it actually prove or disprove this need or existence for a God? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, I want to share a quick story before we get into the details about the Big Bang Theory. This happened a long time ago. And this was, I won't say where, I was present in a community, and one of the community members, who happened to also be, he was a younger person, but he was a teacher at the local weekend Islamic school, their Saturday school, Sunday school, whatever it was. So, I was in that community, and he asked me, he said, look, Sayyid, can you help out? I was like, what do you need? He said, I teach these kids, they're older kids, and I teach them basic aqa'id, theology, Islamic belief system. And there's one kid in there who pretty much has become an atheist. Right? This is a Shia weekend school. It's like, so this kid's pretty much an atheist, and anytime I try to make a point, he brings up some objection. He refutes what I'm saying, and then the whole class gets confused. He's like, because I don't know how to respond to him. I was like, okay, like what kind of advanced stuff is this kid talking about that's, messing you up? He's like, we were talking about the existence of God, and, this brother was telling me, and I did the proofs that were in our curriculum, in our book, and I gave the proofs, and then he responded and objected and pushed back, and basically said, no, the Big Bang explains everything. We don't need a God because we have the Big Bang, and that's what scientists believe, so why do we need this God there to do it? He's like, I didn't know how to respond. So in the back of my mind, the first thought, it wasn't the best thought, was, what are you doing teaching Sunday school then? If you can't respond to something simple like this, maybe you shouldn't be teaching kids. If I hadn't been there, who would you have asked for an answer? Now, this is sometimes an issue that we have. It's wonderful that we have people who are willing to volunteer and help out. I mean, most of these positions that happen in communities, they're all volunteer positions. Unpaid, people are just doing it, even though sometimes they take a lot of flack for it, they get yelled at, they hear complaints from community members. So they're pouring their heart and soul into it, which is wonderful. Only Allah knows the reward that they get. But sometimes we go maybe outside of our jurisdiction, right, outside our lane. Maybe it's not appropriate that we teach Islamic concepts that you and I probably don't understand yet. Because one, not even super smart kid, some kid that just heard a few doubts online or from their kids in public school, their friends, they bring that up in a whole class of other kids in this weekend school, then your class is done if you don't know how to respond to these things. So we have to be very careful of how much we engage in these things. No, I'm not saying just shut everything down and don't teach, but that means we have to step up our effort and make sure that we are properly educated. So if we can take more short-term courses or these weekend courses that some of these institutes offer, like, Mizan Institute has courses, for example. There's a lot of online classes you can do. Whatever we can do to build up and strengthen ourselves is probably something that if we want to teach others, we need to make sure we ourselves first are educated. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, anyway, I sat down. He said, can you sit down with this, this troublemaker? I was like, fine, I'll sit down. So it was the teacher and this kid and myself. So we start having the conversation, and I can tell that kid didn't want to be there in the first place. He was kind of forced to. But I said, look, just say whatever you want. Like, it's okay. We're just having a discussion, a conversation. I'm not going to tell your parents. This is not like, you're not being yelled at or anything. So just tell me what your objections are. I just want to hear them. That's it. So he started giving his objections one by one, right? And then I looked at the teacher, and I said, have you in class ever responded to anything that he said? And he's like, no. And again, same thing I'm thinking. Like, some of the objections he was making were very simple objections, but the teacher couldn't respond to any of them. So I was kind of shocked. Anyway, one of the ones that he brought up was this idea, right? That, what's the point of a God? We don't need it because there's a Big Bang. That's it. I was like, okay, fine, no problem. Explain to me the Big Bang theory. Just do that. Forget the God part of it, just explain to me the Big Bang. He tried and attempted little by little to explain. He said, okay, so in the beginning of the universe, and I stopped him right there. I'm like, you're already wrong. Like, you already don't know what you're talking about. He's like, what do you mean? Sometimes you have to show a little arrogance to people who show their own arrogance. So I said, you don't know what you're talking about. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, that's your first misconception right there. You want to start arguing theology and science, you should know what you're talking about before you start making these bold claims. If you don't even understand the science that you're trying to use to disprove other people, then you should stop talking and do some research first, and then come back. I was like, okay, explain. And this is now where I'm going to share this information with you. The first basic misconception that most of us probably have, and sometimes it's because we were taught this way, is that the Big Bang is the beginning of the universe. That's it. Boom, Big Bang, and that's the beginning of the universe. But according to pretty much all astronomers and cosmologists, the Big Bang is describing what happens right after the universe begins. It's not the beginning, it's right after the universe begins. So it's not talking about the initial start. It's talking about, okay, after it starts, then what's happening, and this is what they're using to describe it. So that's number one. The second misconception, and this is the fault of the name. When you think of Big Bang explosion or Big Bang theory, you're thinking of the universe starting with nothing and then boom, and then it starts. That's what everybody has in their mind because that's how it's named. That's also incorrect. That's not what the Big Bang means. Again, terrible name. It's interesting, right? Somebody, because when this theory was first proposed, there was an interview that was being done, I think on BBC Radio. I forgot the name of the opponent of this. But the person who was being interviewed was like, what do you think about this new Big Bang, this new theory about the universe XYZ? He said, oh, this Big Bang theory? Like he said it in a very negative way. He's like, it's a joke. So the Big Bang phrase was used by somebody who didn't believe in it, and then it kind of stuck for some reason. Anyway, the Big Bang, or what we're thinking about, this right after the beginning of the universe, is not, there's no explosion. What it's talking about is expansion. So it's not like there was fireworks or dynamite at the beginning of the universe or right after the beginning. No, it's more like a balloon. It's talking about expansion. That's what the Big Bang is supposed to describe and explain. So even these small little details matter, because when somebody's thinking about, at the beginning of the universe there was nothing and then there was an explosion. Said, okay, you're off on like so many different points. You're using this to disprove God, but you're already wrong. So we have to go back and make sure we understand the science, then we can go into everything else. And this is something that's applicable for all of us. There's a lot of these new, wonderful, beautiful theories that come out in science, and a lot of us want to figure out, how does this tie to us as Muslims? Right? There's this famous, very cliche heading that people always talk about and hear. Is religion compatible with science? Is science compatible with religion? What's the relationship between science and religion? I've heard this so many times. I've heard this since I was a kid. And to be honest, I don't think it's been very adequately answered. Right? Let me explain a little bit more. If you can recite as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. So first, it's important, remember we were talking about epistemology a little bit yesterday? It's important to understand how science is actually done. How do you do science? What does it actually mean? And yesterday with logic, we were saying that there's basically two different ways we make conclusions. One way is through deduction, and the other way is through induction. Which one does science use? Anybody know? This is a 50-50 shot, man, come on. Induction, yeah, okay, we got some smart people here, very good. If you're just guessing probably, right? Okay, so what's the difference between deduction and induction? What science does is induction, which is what? Is that I go and I do an experiment, and I do another experiment. I keep testing and testing and testing, and I got all these conclusions. I take all these conclusions, put them together, and then I try to make a generalization from that. I try to make a theory from that, right? For example, if I'm doing a test, let me see the shirt color of everybody that walks in the room. First person, oh, great. Now, all right, that was a terrible, Allah just decided that on purpose, but if I was making the example properly, they would have been, okay, first person, black shirt, second person, black shirt. I keep doing this over and over again, and most likely you'd probably have, as we see over here, 20, 30 people with all black shirts, right? So then I turn away and say, all right, everybody here that comes in is going to have a black shirt. That's what science is basically doing, right? There we go, thanks for proving my point. Now what happens if the brother who came in with the gray one, if he comes in afterwards, then my whole theory is shot. I have to go back to the drawing board. That's all science is. Very simplistically, that's science. Is you're testing and testing and testing, trying to account for whatever variables you can, but at the end of the day, you have all these few different things and you're trying to make a generalization. Will it ever be 100% accurate? Never. Anytime somebody says that this is a scientific fact, they don't know what science is. There's no such thing as a scientific fact. No such thing. Theorems, all these quote-unquote laws change constantly. There's a reason why it's called the Big Bang Theory, not the Big Bang Law. It's based on whatever calculations and modeling they've done. This is what they have, and this is the prevailing idea. But as many of you know, that it's not the only one that's out there, right? There's this idea of the oscillating theory of the universe. There's string theory that talks about different ideas, right? There's so many different ideas out there, but the Big Bang is the most prevailing one. So science, what it does is it does a bunch of experiments, takes that and says, our conclusion is that most likely this is the principle or law that's in place. So for example, the way that, I'll give you another example, hopefully it makes sense. So when they were trying to determine if water would boil at a certain temperature, what temperature, oh you tell me, what temperature does water boil at? Any chemists in here? Say it louder. 100 Celsius? Is that actually true? Okay, good. Okay. I don't speak Celsius, I'm an American, okay? So 100 Celsius, right? So, so now the little side conversation is the reason why we have to explain this. Everybody would say 100 Celsius. And what happens is, in a certain lab, they were testing it over and over and over again. They said, look, every time, whatever we test it, it's always at 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. But guess what? Is that true everywhere and every place? No. What happens is when you change elevation, right? Not altitude, but elevation, right? Elevation, yeah. When you change elevation, then the temperature required changes as well too. So what happened is, as long as they didn't account for that variable, they thought, here's the law. No matter where you are, because we experimented so many times, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. But then one person and their elevation, whether higher or lower, was like, it doesn't hit 100 for us. For some of us it was lower, some of us it was higher. They're like, oops, we didn't account for that, and now we have to go back to the drawing board and reaccount for that and redo our formula. And then they could say, look, okay, we've checked for elevation and now things have changed. Well, guess what? They can come forward in time and a new variable comes into place and that might change everything too. The point is, after every single scientific theorem or fact, or whatever they want to say, they have to say the door is open for it to change. We don't know. We never know with certainty. Science is not in the business of 100% yaqeen and certainty. It's impossible to do that in science. They will experiment and keep doing it over and over and over again. They'll use these mathematical models and everything, and computer models, but it'll only give them partial understanding of the world, because there's only so many variables that you and I can look at, and that's it. Which is fine, because it leads to all these advancements that we have. It's not like a bad science, a discipline. We use it and it works, but it changes. So what we say is that, okay, if you want to use this discipline, which never really leads to certainty, and you want to use this to disprove God, you've got a tall order. You're using something that's already weak, which is induction. Induction means you take a bunch of ideas and you make a generalized conclusion. What is deduction? Deduction is the exact opposite. Is that we have something that's absolutely certain. That, for example, 1 + 1 = 2. It's an absolute certainty. It doesn't matter what elevation, what time, what place, what race, what religion, it doesn't matter. 1 + 1 will be 2. Even if humans don't exist, 1 + 1 is still 2. A million years in the future, 1 + 1 is still 2. And the way that we take that idea and deduce something is that, okay, if I have one apple and then another apple, it's 2 apples. That'll never change. If I have one microphone and another microphone, that'll be 2 microphones. So we apply it the same way every way, every time, every place. That's how deduction works. You have this principle, this idea, a law, 100% accurate, and then you apply it to everywhere in the world and it will never change. You understand the difference, I hope, right? So things like math uses deduction. And you apply that to the world, because math will never change. Unless you're using postmodern math, then it unfortunately changes, right? But all of us who our aql works properly, then we use the real math. But other science, the physical sciences, that's induction, that's the exact opposite. It's coin flips. It's experimenting and making predictions for the future. That's what science does. Not trying to belittle it, right? For all you future doctors and engineers and things like that, but we have to know its limits too. And the reason we want to mention this is because there are many of us who have turned science into a religion. They ask about the relationship between the two and they make science a religion. They think that science yields them 100% certainty. And what happens? Because that's the language everybody else speaks. Science is truth. Science is the way that we have to understand the world. So what do? They take the Quran, let me take something that scientists say, and I want to prove to everybody that Islam is true and the Quran is true, so let me go find some scientific stuff in the Quran. And then I'll go show some people, oh look, 1400 years ago, our religion already said that. Right? That's what people like to do. And there's many examples of that, and this is one of them, the Big Bang Theory. People have taken a certain ayah, which I don't want to mention because I don't want to give you this connection in your mind. There's a certain ayah that some people have utilized. They take that and say, look, this ayah is talking about the Big Bang and the expansion of the universe. Subhanallah, Islam is haqq now. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Slow down. Hold on. Well, send a salawat first, of course. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We have to be careful of doing things like that. Why? Because what happens is there were people before, when they believed that the earth was flat, they had proofs. They claimed proofs in the Quran. You see, the earth is flat. When people used to believe that the earth was the center of the universe, right? The geocentric model, right? They said, see, we have an ayah to prove that as well too, that the earth is the center. And then when scientists came and said, oops, actually the sun is the center. Oops, actually the earth is round. And then the speakers and scholars, whoever was out there, and us, the lay people, were like, oops, we made a mistake. So, hold on. Oh, yes, sorry, the Quran actually said the sun is the center, and the Quran actually says that the earth is round. And then one day, if that changes all of a sudden, they're like, oh, sorry, let's go back and find another ayah for you. Why do we keep changing like that? In the Big Bang Theory, we're doing the same exact thing. If now, tomorrow, they say, you know what, the Big Bang Theory is outdated, we're going to go with this oscillating theory of the universe. That is just, infinite universes that collapse and then expand and collapse and expand, and that's how you have these infinite Big Bangs happening. So it's an oscillating, theory of the universe or whatever it is. Like, okay, well, we have to find an ayah for that now so that we can seem like we're on top. Why are we playing with the Quran like this? The Quran is not a book of science. It's not a scientific book. The Quran is a book of truth, but it's not something that we have to pull out all these scientific ideas. Why? Because science is always playing catch up. So we don't want to make the Quran seem like it has to play catch up as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It should be the other way around, where the Quran is telling us things and we take that as truth and we say, look, science is saying something else. Well, we don't have to believe that because the Quran, the Ahlul Bayt have told us differently. So you out there with your limited variables, you can believe whatever you want, but we have wahi, we have revelation which goes beyond anything else. Revelation is there to make up for all the things that you and I can't account for. That's the point of revelation. Science can't account for it. Our aql, logic can't account for it, but wahi, when it comes directly from Allah, that's saying, with all variables considered, this is the truth. That's why we rely on the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, for that truth that no one else has access to. Right? That's the point. Okay. Now let's go back to this idea of the Big Bang. We already said, when people are trying to say that the Big Bang disproves God, already at the beginning say, look, that's not going to disprove God. Why? Because the Big Bang is not talking about the beginning of the universe, it's talking about what happened right after. This expansion that's taking place right after the universe begins. So already you're like, okay, for the beginning of the universe, you still need an explanation. Or you, individual who claims the Big Bang started it, that's incorrect. You have to explain what started the Big Bang. So you're back at the same position. You haven't solved anything there, right? Okay. There's another point that I want to bring up too, which it's not that the Big Bang disproves God or makes it neutral. In fact, we could even argue, if we wanted to, and we will, that theories like this actually help the case towards proving Allah and religion more than disproving it. So how is that the case? Again, a little bit more science to bore you with. There are things called presumptions and assumptions for any sort of science, right? You don't just go in there with a blank slate. You have these ideas you need to be true before you engage in science. For the Big Bang theory to be true, for it to work, you have to have some presumptions in mind too. So what are some of them? One thing is called the cosmological principle. It's a fancy term which says that the universe is both homogeneous and isotropic. Again, all fancy stuff, which I'll explain in a minute. And there's another idea called the law of universality, or the universality of physical laws. Again, fancy terms, it just means that everything in the observable universe is doing the same thing everywhere at any direction all the time. There's no changes, there's no random stuff happening there. Let me explain with an example, I think it'll be clearer. All right, what's the sport of choice? You have to pick a sport right now. Soccer? Thank you. Oh, wow. Okay, I would have hoped for football, but I guess we'll go with soccer, no problem. Okay, can you send a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad? Okay, so in a soccer field, it's split into two different sections, right? Wherever you are, if you stand in the center of the field, everything else should be the same exact distance away, right? So if I look at one goal versus the other goal, they should be the exact same distance. If I look at one corner to another corner, it should be the exact same distance, right? So this is one sort of idea of the cosmological principle. The universe has this basic same sort of, the laws are the same no matter where you go. Okay. Now let's say we start playing. Now, outside of the goalies, is anybody allowed to grab the ball with their hands, right, while the ball's in play? No, right? Soccer, you can't do that. Now imagine somebody in the middle of the game just picks up the ball and says, I'm going to go run and just throw it in the goal. Like, no, you're not allowed to do that. Now who's going to be the person that stops the person from doing that? The ref, right? So you have all these players, and there's supposed to be rules that you follow, and the ref is there to enforce it. So, in order for soccer to actually happen and take place, you need rules in place and you need somebody to enforce them. That's all the cosmological principle and this fancy law of universality, that's all it is. is that everywhere in the universe, the exact same rules are in place. It's not like one place in the universe, gravity doesn't work at all. In this place, gravity is like 20 million times, the law of gravity doesn't apply. Every single law that's in place, it happens every single place. The universe plays fair with us. Otherwise, scientists can't do science. That no matter what direction you look in, no matter where you start, the universe will be expanding. There's no such thing as a center of the universe. There's no such thing as an edge of the universe, right? Things like that. And what they're saying, again, this is what astronomers and cosmologists are saying, is that this is what we need to be true in order for the Big Bang Theory to be true. That the universe has to play fair with us. That there has to be a bunch of rules, and the whole universe, everything has to follow these rules. If that's the case, then you can have the Big Bang Theory. Like, okay, cool. So what you're saying basically is that there's all these laws which you can't explain where they came from, right? Scientists don't have any explanation whatsoever. They have no way to explain why there is a law of gravity, why there is a law of thermodynamics, law of conservation. They have no explanation for it. They can't explain it. They have to suppose it and presuppose it, but they can't explain it. They don't know where the laws came from. Beyond that, there's a ref that's making sure everybody's following this law. The law of conservation of mass and energy, all these things that, most of you have taken basic science, you've learned these things. These laws apply everywhere. And they were required for the Big Bang Theory to happen. So, okay, so you're basically telling us that a bunch of laws that you believe are in place, you don't know where they came from, so they're there, and they were there at that beginning of the universe before the Big Bang. And you're saying that there's some ref that constantly makes sure that none of these laws are broken. So you're just describing God. I don't know what you think you're describing, but that sounds like God to us. Is somebody who's created all the systems and variables and laws needed for this place to function, the whole universe to function, and somebody to make sure that all of it's functioning properly constantly, making sure everything is designed in order and systematic. Well, that's the way that we talk about God, so you can say whatever you want, but you keep describing God to us constantly, right? And it seems, again, this ayah is not directly saying it, but it's an inspiration, we'll put it that way, right? In Surah Al-Talaq, Surah 65, ayah 12, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah alladhi khalaqa sab'a samawatin wa min al-ardi mithlahunna. Allah has created 7 higher dimensions and dimensions lower than that as well too. I don't want to explain what that means, let's leave that aside. Allah has created all these levels of reality. يَتَنَزَّلُ الْأَمْرُ بَيْنَهُنْ. And He's made these rules and laws that exist between all these things. Now, the reason I don't want to explain this is because samawat and ard, typically we translate as heavens or skies and earth. That's not a great translation. It's talking about higher levels of reality, higher dimensions and lower dimensions. But that's going to get way too irfani for you guys, so I can't do it yet, right? I don't know if you can handle the irfan right now. I'm not sure, right? Maybe some other night we'll talk about that. But Allah's saying that Allah is sending down all of these different rules, all these different laws, all these different commands. And Allah explains why He does that. لِتَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. So that all of you realize that Allah is the one who's on top of all this and in control. He is the one who's controlling all of this. He's got the qudra and the power over all of these things. The reason why we see everything functioning properly, we don't see spontaneous things just popping into existence and leaving existence, random things happening anywhere at all, things are always following this system of order, is because Allah is saying, I want you to understand that there must have been somebody that's putting this in place and controlling it. That's the whole reason for this. If we ever witness something random happening, right? If something randomly just came into existence right now, or one of us randomly just popped out of existence, then we would have an excuse against Allah. We could say, Allah, in reality, we saw that things would pop in and out of reality without any reason. So that would make us question whether there's a God or not, because if one person can pop in and out of existence, why couldn't the universe pop in and out of existence? Allah says, no, I'm not going to give you this ammunition. I'll show you the other way, that this universe in reality only functions when every single thing is in its place, when cause and effect is there, when these laws are there and they're maintained every single place, so much so that an atheistic scientist, somebody who's even studying quantum mechanics, they can't reject this. It's impossible for them to reject, otherwise they can't even engage in the science in the first place. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You know what's funny? Even after all of this, people still want to object. They say, no, that's not enough. We still think that this universe just randomly came here. Sometimes it's not accidental, but it's random. There was all these different possibilities that could have happened. Maybe there was no universe like ours. Maybe there's a complete opposite universe, a negative universe, a million different infinite possibilities, and randomly ours was chosen to exist. It's like, okay, let's think that through. Is it possible that all of this is just completely random? No, let's actually play that out. Okay. Let's use this as an example, right? Let's say we had like a hat or a bowl or something, right? And in this bowl or in this hat, we're going to put a bunch of possible universes, right? And as long as those possible universes are in the bowl or in the hat, that means that they don't exist yet. Once they come out of that bowl or hat, that means, guess what? Now they exist, right? Follow the experiment so far? Okay. So we'll take our own universe, we'll just call that universe A, we write it on a piece of paper, we drop it in. We'll make another universe where, let's say, there's no humans at all, just all other types of animals and life forms. That's universe B, we drop that in the bowl. We take another one, universe C, where we're here, but instead of us speaking and thinking and being moral, maybe animals are the ones who think and have free will and they're moral. Universe C. There's another one, universe D, where you're not sitting here being bored by my lecture, you're here listening from somebody else. That's universe D. Right? We can go with a lot of different ones, right? So we pop them all, throw them in the bowl. As long as they're in the bowl, they don't exist. Once they come out, now, congratulations, you've been born, you're now an existing universe. Okay? You got the experiment, right? So we just take this bowl, we'll put it down, and now we'll sit there and we'll just wait for one of these universes to come into existence. Yeah? So now what's going to happen? We'll just be sitting there waiting. Because how is this universe going to actually come out of the bowl? How is any of these universes, even all of them, how will they actually come out? If we did this experiment with anything else, if I said, let me write down 5 names or 5 numbers and I put it in a hat, these things are not going to pop out on their own. Somebody has to reach in and grab something, right? Randomization is when something ends up being chosen. There has to be a choosing force there. Even if those of you who code, if you're writing a program, at the end of the day, the code is going to say that at some certain point, stop, and then choose whatever number you've landed on, right? That's how randomization works. There's something that terminates things or begins something. That's how randomization works. What they're trying to say is that there's this pool of random universes. Like, hold on, you're already saying something is existing, so your whole idea is weird in the first place, but fine. Let's just say that, yeah, in a pool of nothing, there's random universes that don't even exist yet. So, okay, then how did any of them come into existence? How did this one come here? The only way it possibly could is if some other force, which has the ability to, go above a universe, pulls it out. That's the only way it's possible, because you're saying it's random, so a universe can't bring itself in. You're saying that that's not possible. A universe doesn't make itself. So what you're also saying, again, is that some other powerful entity or force had to pull this thing out and make that choice. And even if they did it with their eyes closed, it still had enough power and ability that they were able to choose it in the first place. So you can keep giving all these examples and all these objections, but you just keep making a better case for God than you do to say that everything was non-existent or random. Salawat al Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There's a lot more objections too. I don't know how many more that you guys can handle, how many more we can even go through. When we went through the proof yet last night, when we talked about the argument of by design, some people object to that too, right? They say, okay, fine, let's agree with all the stuff that you've said so far. Fine, we believe that there was a designer. Some force, some entity put these laws here, put the universe here, fine. But what you haven't disproven yet, we haven't shown us is why is it only one? Why couldn't a bunch of aliens or powerful forces have all pulled these things out of a hat or created the universe? Basically, do you have any argument for monotheism versus polytheism? Or can you show us why it's only one God and why that one God is there and didn't need a creator? Why didn't that God need to be pulled out of a hat? Where did that God get its existence from? This is Bertrand Russell's famous sort of idea, right? You're saying that there's a God, this creator, cool, but where did that God get its existence from then? Who created that God? And if you said, oh, there's a more powerful God, then you have to keep doing this forever. You keep saying there's always these gods that are creating other gods, which is insane. What's the point of believing in that? So we got a problem now. Like, how do we answer this idea of polytheism or who created God? I'm going to try to quickly go through that. Hopefully we can try to summarize it in the next few minutes. It might be a little intense, so hopefully if you can focus and pay attention, we can get through this, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. So the example I have to keep simple examples, so I can't use soccer anymore. So I think I'm going to use chocolate milk. I think that might work. Yeah? Yes, I'm going to use chocolate milk to prove God, right? All right. So I'm a big chocolate milk fan. I don't know about the rest of you. I lived on that when I was a kid, right? Okay. So, how do we get chocolate milk? You get it from chocolate cows, right? No. Famous that was my one dad joke for the night. I said one every night, right? Was that my limit? Okay. No such thing as chocolate cows, right? Chocolate milk has to be made, has to be created, right? Has to be mixed. Okay, so I say fine, you get regular milk, which has no chocolatey flavor, and you get some sort of syrup. Typically that's what people do, right? Some syrup or powder or whatever, and they put it in the milk and that's how they get it. Okay, fine. So that syrup, whatever you decide to get, you'd say, okay, that chocolate syrup, was that syrup by itself? Was that chocolate? Was that chocolatey always? No, that had to get its chocolate from somewhere too, right? But that powder too, we say, why does that powder, why does it taste like chocolate? Anything that has this feature of being chocolatey, it must have gotten it from somewhere. It didn't have it by itself, right? If you have chocolate milk, it got it from somewhere. You got chocolate cake, it got it from somewhere. It doesn't have it by itself. So then we go back, that syrup that you used to add it to chocolate milk, well, the syrup by itself didn't have the feature of having, being chocolatey. It got it from somewhere else until we go all the way back and we get to that famous bean, which is cacao or cocoa, right? That by itself, that has the trait of being chocolatey. Whenever you take cocoa or cacao, you put it in anything, it becomes chocolatey. That's the way it works. You take you take cacao or cocoa, you put it in chai, you got chocolate chai now. I'm not advocating for that. I know that sounds blasphemous. I'm not advocating for it. But that's what you would do. Anytime you want something chocolatey, you have to start back at some sort of cocoa or cacao. That's how you do it. That's the only way. Now if somebody says, but how does cocoa and cacao get its chocolate? That's its quality. That's what it has. Following? Let me give another example. Right now, this mimbar, alhamdulillah, is not wet. If I take this water and I pour it on the mimbar now gets wet. If I pour it on the floor becomes wet. Anytime water makes contact with something else, that thing now has the quality of being wet. Now, I know this question came out very ironically many years ago, but then the question is, okay, what about water? Well, water has the quality where it makes everything else wet. Water doesn't need something else to make it wet because that's what water does. Water has that quality by itself. It's watery and it is wet. Anytime it comes in contact with something else, it gives it its own quality. It gives it wetness. It makes it watery. That's how water works. You do the same thing with salt. Salt has its own quality. It's salty, obviously. When you put salt in anything, it makes that salty. You take oil, you put it in something or on something, that thing becomes oily. You're following the examples, I hope, right? So now we are trying to figure out this question. Over here, none of us were able to bring ourselves into existence. We didn't give ourselves life. We didn't make ourselves. It had to come from something else, right? Whole chain, parents, grandparents, ancestors. It's coming from something else. And our parents and our ancestors, they didn't make themselves either. So we keep tracing it back, just like chocolate. We keep going back and back and back. It can't go back till infinity. You start off with something which by itself has this quality of existence and life and then gives it to everything else. Basically, we are the chocolate milk and Allah's the chocolate. That's the way it is. So if somebody says, well, who gave Allah chocolate? Well, he was chocolatey by default. Because if he wasn't, then none of us would be here in the first place. So there are always things that have certain qualities by default. They don't need to get it from some outside source. Sometimes it means being oily, in the case of oil. Sometimes it means being salty, in the case of salt. Sometimes it means being sweet, in the case of sugar, which I don't advocate for. I'm anti-sugar, by the way. MashaAllah, yeah. I'm a stevia monk fruit guy myself, but anyway. And in the case of being, in the case of wujud and life and existence, well, guess what? We all got it because of something that had this quality in and of itself. God, this entity, which in Arabic we call this thing wajibul wujud, the necessary being, has this quality always. And now, if you always have the quality of existence, you don't need to get it from somewhere else. Now, if you have the quality of existence, by default, that means you have no start, you have no end. Nobody causes you. You're not dependent on anything else. All those sifat, all those names that we learn, all come because why? Because Allah is wajibul wujud. He has his existence by default, and anything that Allah comes in contact with gets existence too. That divine breath. That's how this works. So when somebody says, well, what caused God? He doesn't need a cause because he has existence by himself. There's a famous analogy that they give as well too, to kind of drive the point home. You've seen a relay race before? Right? Where there's people, various racers in a line, they have various numbers, they have to pass on a baton to the next person in line, right? So now, if we see this, and we see, let's say we jump in the middle of a race, and we see somebody with a number 4, right, on them, and they have a baton in their hand. We stop them in the middle of the race, which is really rude. Don't stop them in the race, but we do anyway. Say, hey, where'd you get the baton from? They say, I got it from the person before me who was number 3. We ask the person, okay, where'd you get it from? Well, I got it from the person before me. They were number 2. Okay, we go to number 2. Where'd you get it from? I got it from number 1. And then we ask number 1, well, where'd you get it? It's like, well, I had it from the beginning. In order for number 1 to pass it on to everybody else, he has to have started it. He has to have it by himself from the beginning. Same thing with existence, with wujud. Somebody has to have that in their hand from the beginning and then pass it on to everybody else. That's what Allah is. That's what God is that takes that quality of life, of existence, and gives it to everybody else. So Allah is wajib al-wujud. Wujud, existence is wajib for Him. You can't take it away, and He's not given it by anybody else. And we are mumkin al-wujud. It's called contingent. That we don't have to exist, but Allah, out of His kindness and grace, is like, here you go, here's some existence, enjoy. And that's how we are. So this means that, okay, you can't have multiple of these now too, because that one existence takes the place of everything. You can't have one above that, because that one God already has these qualities. So any example you can make of 2, 3, 4, a million won't work with this idea of a wajib al-wujud. I sped through this a little bit. I hope it makes sense. If there's any confusion, I can try to explain a bit more tomorrow or after, inshallah. But hopefully the point makes sense, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Again, I don't want to turn it into like a full, philosophical theology class, but hopefully some of these points are helpful to us, inshallah. Now, where are we going to go from this? Well, we tried to go through various points about Tawheed. We went through a few different points, and this final point that we mentioned, this final proof, is one of the more advanced proofs, right? It's a fancier burhan, an idea that shows us that there is an entity which gives existence to everything else, and we use the word God or Allah for that entity. And from that, we understand all these other qualities of God. So a person can use this proof of argument by design. They can use these fancier proofs of a first cause. They can use this wajib al-wujud. We have a bunch of these things. Again, this is just a small sample, and we only just quickly went through it. So now when people again are coming to us, they say you have no proof. Like, look, in over 2 nights with maybe 30-40 minutes each night, we already went through 3 of these things very quickly, and we left out a lot of proofs. And we could have spent a bit more time if we had time, but we didn't. So if anybody ever tells you that, oh, there's no proof, there's no rational or logical proof, these past 2 nights, we didn't need to rely on any Quran, we didn't need to rely on any hadith, none of our emotions, none of our feelings, all this was based on principles of logic and reason, that was it. And even the first night and the beginning of tonight, we relied on what you scientists believe as well too. We didn't need to rely on anything that's already a part of our faith that we're taking for granted. We relied on everything that you rely on already. So don't tell us that we lack proof and we lack logic. It's actually you that don't have the logic and rational ideas and proofs. You are anti-science, not us. Everything that we believe, everything that we say is in line with how reality is functioning. So if you want to disprove that, bismillah, give it a shot. But philosophers from the beginning of time have tried and they haven't succeeded yet. Everybody's been trying to disprove these and they haven't done so. And the atheists that are typically out there that don't believe, that may have gone through these kind of proofs, I've read their books. They try to object to them and their objections are not sound. They're not good proofs. I've read Richard Dawkins' books. He doesn't understand these ideas. And even that last one we just mentioned right now, he doesn't even understand this proof. He doesn't even mention it in his book. Right? They talk about the ontological argument of St. Anselm, which is a different version altogether. But this one that we've talked about is different. This is something that is a pride of Muslim philosophers. So what do we do now? We hopefully take what we've talked about regarding Tawheed on the first few nights with some of these ideas of the proofs, and hopefully it gives us a bit more certainty. We don't need to be in doubt about Allah. There's no reason to be in doubt. Everything points towards Allah. There's no reason to be in doubt about this. What we have to do now, our job is to take the theory, to take that deeper understanding of Tawheed, that everything needs to be seen from the eyes of Allah, practically applying Tawheed, practicing Tawheed, and say, you know what? My La ilaha illallah, whenever I believe this, and whenever I say it, whenever I act upon it, it needs to become a priority for me. That's what these discussions are supposed to do for us. If I now really do believe that God is there, Allah is there, and He's obviously sending down all this guidance for me, what excuse do I have to go against Him? Why am I going to go against that? It's the most obvious thing in the world. Why am I fighting against Him? Why am I allowing myself to disobey, to do sin and guna and ma'asiyah? What's the point? It's the most obvious truth in the world. Why am I wasting my life doing all these other things? We need to make sure that La ilaha illallah, that belief in Tawheed, is something practical in our life. And we can translate it again as, instead of saying there is no God but Allah, say that there is no priority except Allah. Allah is the only priority that we have. Once we get ijazah and permission from Allah to do something, then we do it. Otherwise, we leave it alone. If Allah says that, yeah, you can watch certain movies, you can play certain games, you can play certain sports, you can spend your money like this, then fine, I'll do it. But if He doesn't give me permission to speak a certain way, to think a certain way, to act a certain way, then why am I doing it? Why would I be so defiant to the most obvious thing in reality? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The question that we'll start with tomorrow night follows from this. Okay, these proofs are good. I believe in Allah now. That was good. But I still have an issue here. I believe that Allah created everything, but I have some doubts about the way He's attempted to guide us. There are a lot of people like that too, right? Who say, okay, fine, let's agree that there is a creator, there is a God. But for certain amounts of reasons, I don't want to obey that God. Yeah, sure, this God created us and the universe and reality, fine. But because of certain things that I'm seeing out in the universe, in this reality, on this earth, people are dealing with pain, they're dealing with suffering, injustice, oppression, dhulm. Why would I worship a God like that? You Muslims, you Christians, you Jews keep saying God is merciful and kind and compassionate. Where is that kindness and compassion? Where is His justice? We don't see that. That's how they respond, right? And many Muslims, unfortunately, have taken on this idea as well too. And even though they won't reject God, they'll reject a merciful God. They won't reject Allah, but they'll reject Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Ghafur, Al-Ghaffar, and all these other beautiful names of Allah. Say, I've gone through too much difficulty in my life for me to go and bother worshipping Allah. Na'udhu billah. So that's the objection and that's the idea, the adl, the justice of God that we want to try to start talking about tomorrow night. Inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When somebody truly understands and really has a relationship, ma'rifah of Allah, they understand that Allah is only capable of doing things that are just. When they have that true love of Allah in their hearts, all of their thoughts, all of their words, all of their actions are all focused and oriented through Allah, and that's it. And it's amazing that, sometimes we see people like this in our own communities and families, and typically it's people who are older, who have lived a certain life that have this kind of ma'rifah or this kind of, diniyah, this kind of religious belief in taqwa. But sometimes, and this is what we see when we go through the example of the Ahlul Bayt, and specifically the Shuhada of Karbala, that this is something that doesn't have an age restriction. This is something that we witnessed last night when we remembered On and Muhammad, and tonight we witness it as well when we remember Qasim ibn al-Hasan, another youth that became Shaheed in Karbala. And this, as difficult as the Shahada of On and Muhammad was, as difficult as it was for Imam Hussein to give permission to On and Muhammad, giving permission to Qasim was much more difficult for Imam Hussein. Now, of course, all of them, they're all his nephews. So we would imagine that, it might be equally difficult. But that's not the case. Because, remember, the relationship that Imam Hussein has with Qasim is much different than his relationship with On and Muhammad. We begin by remembering on that 10th night of Ashura, when everybody is gathered together with Imam Hussein. All the adults, all the companions, all the family members, all the men who are ready to go out that next day, the next afternoon, to begin their fight against the forces of Yazid, of Umar ibn Sa'd, la'natullah alayhim. You see that Imam Hussein begins to tell them and give them details about their akhirah, and even giving them details about their shahada, telling them what would happen at the time when they become shaheed. One by one, the Imam is going around telling his companions, telling his other relatives what's going to happen and how they will become shaheed and what's going to take place. And the whole time, Qasim is sitting there waiting. Again, he's a young boy amongst all of these seasoned veterans, seasoned warriors. Imagine him, think about the position Qasim's in, right? This young teenager. He's looking at people like Abbas, like Ali al-Akbar, like Habib, like Zuhair. He sees all these warriors, and Imam Hussein is going around and speaking to them and telling them about their akhirah, telling them about their position in Jannah, telling them about their shahada. And then he notices that Imam Hussein has skipped over him. So he goes to Imam Hussein and he says, Ya Amma, oh my uncle, what about me? What about my shahada? Will I go? Will I become shaheed as well? Imam Hussein begins to tremble. He wants to test Qasim a little bit. And this is a test for us more than it is for Qasim when we remember this line. He asks first, you tell me, before I tell you about your death, you tell me, what do you think of death? What is death like in your eyes? And he says those very, very famous lines. Ya Amma, oh my uncle, ahla min al-asr. Al-maut ahla min al-asr. It's sweeter to me than honey. That's what death is for me. It's sweeter than honey. How many of us think of death like that? When we think about losing loved ones, losing our own life, we're in fear of being sick, accidentally dying. But Qasim says, no, it's sweeter to me than honey. I'm ready to go. So then Imam Hussein doesn't even give him a direct answer. He goes and says, not only will you become shaheed, O my Qasim, O my nephew, but even your cousin, even Ali al-Asghar will become shaheed in all of this. And Qasim now, his heart begins to tremble as well. He says, what does this mean? Does this mean that they will come to our tents after we have become shaheed? That they will attack all the women and children, these innocent people in the tents when we have all died and become shaheed? That's how they will kill my cousin Ali al-Asghar? Is that what's going to happen? He says, yes, what you're saying is true. They will come to the tents. They will attack the women and children. It is true. And they will burn it as well. They will burn these tents. But this is not the way that my Asghar will become shaheed. And some narrations say this is where Imam Hussein began to hesitate to want to even tell him. But some say he did go on and say, no, my son Ali al-Asghar, your 6-month-old cousin will become shaheed in my hands when I go out and I ask these enemies for a drop of water for him. This is how he will become shaheed. And they say that Qasim and Imam Hussein began to cry together when he heard this. Now we fast forward to Ashura, when the soldiers have gone out one by one. All of the companions have given their lives. Now Qasim begins to see all of his relatives, they're going out towards battle. He sees Ali al-Akbar to go out and to fight and become shaheed. He sees all these other members of Bani Hashim all going out one by one becoming shaheed. And now he says, it must be my turn too, let me go. So he goes to Imam Hussein. He says, Amma, oh my uncle, Chacha, give me permission, let me go now. Everyone else is gone, let me go and fight. Now when On and Muhammad came, it was tough for Imam Hussein, but eventually he gave permission because of Zainab. But when he saw Qasim, he says, no, I can't give you permission. He turned Qasim away. He says, how can I do this? Again and again, Qasim would come and ask over and over again, please let me go out, let me fight. Everyone else went, it's my turn to go as well too. Let me go and become shaheed, let me fight as well on the battlefield. I'm ready. And Imam Hussein kept rejecting him. Whenever he saw Qasim, his eyes would swell up, he would begin tearing and crying. He couldn't handle seeing Qasim. And then Qasim says, I don't understand, why don't you let me go out? He began kissing the Imam's hands, kissing his feet. He says, just let me go out and fight for you. Don't reject me. This is not fair, let me go out and fight for you as well. And then Imam Hussein finally picks him up and he says, how can I let you go? He says, you are the last piece that I have from my brother Hasan. You are the amanat that has been given. He said, and perhaps this is where poets and some historians remember that Imam Hussein is perhaps remembering and telling Qasim, he says, don't you remember? You wouldn't remember because you were just an infant when your father passed away. When he was dying and he placed you in my arms and gave you as an amanat, I'm thinking of that time when your father gave you to me like this when you were an infant. And now how can I send you out into battle when I've been ordered to protect you? How can I do like this? He says, no, it's because of my father. Because of this is why I want to go out and fight. Please. And he begins to tell Imam Hussein, he says, you've shown more love to me than you have to your own sons and to your own children. You've shown more love to me than anybody else. Whenever there was a gift that was to be given, you would gift me first, then you would gift your own children. Whenever people were eating, you would feed me first, then you would feed your own children. He says, but here, you already sent out Ali al-Akbar. Why didn't you let me go out first? Is it because I'm yatim? It's because I'm not worthy? Imam Hussein begins crying. He says, no, that's not the case. Fine, I will let you go out. And finally, Hussein says, fine, I will let you go. And they begin preparing him for battle. And they say, mu'mineen, mu'minat, the armor that they had left, they didn't have much supplies in their camp. The armor that they put on Qasim was so big, it didn't fit him properly. And this we see even after, on Sham al-Ghariba, this is something that was stolen by the enemies. They saw that this boy was coming on the battlefield, someone that didn't have armor that fit him properly. They noticed, one enemy says that I saw that he was coming in sandals, and even the strap on his sandals on his left foot was broken. But we saw that the shining moon was coming towards us. We said, how could Hussein send these young boys towards us? And they underestimated him. But when Qasim went out, he fought ferociously on the battlefield, killing enemy after enemy, one by one, until the narrations tell us that one person, the way that they saw Imam Hussein send out Qasim, the way that he saw when Imam Hussein had sent out Qasim, he was hugging him so tight, crying so much that they said both Qasim and Hussein fainted at that moment. When they came to, that's finally when Qasim was able to go out. When this enemy saw that, he noticed this, he said, I want to be the cause of Hussein's pain. I want his heart to break. I'm going to go out into the battlefield and kill this little boy so that I can break the heart of Hussein. This is how evil some of these people were. So this individual goes, he sneaks up behind Qasim and he strikes him on the head with utmost strength and ferocity. Qasim falls down off of his horse with this gash on his head, and he screams out for his uncle, Ya Amma, adrikni. Chacha, uncle, come and help me, help me. And some narrations tell us that he called his uncle and he kept calling over and over again, but his voice became fainter and fainter and fainter. And Imam Hussein didn't understand this until he finally came to the body. And it's because in all of this commotion, when he flew towards the body of Qasim like an eagle, this is the way that the enemies report this, that Imam Hussein flew towards the body of Qasim. When the enemies saw that Hussein was coming towards them, they became frantic and they got afraid, and their horses started to go in every single direction. They couldn't see which way they were going because the dust, the sand from Karbala was coming up, so the horses were going in all different directions. And as they were doing this, they began to trample the body of Qasim little by little. This is why his voice was getting fainter and softer, with each trampling over and over and over again. Until finally, when Hussein is finally able to make it to the body of Qasim, there's nothing left for him to see. He comes down to Qasim, he grabs his head, and he begins crying and screaming. He says, what have I done to you, oh my nephew, oh my beloved Ya Bunayya? He says, what is it with me? Why couldn't I reach you? Why couldn't I give jawab to you properly? It breaks my heart that you called to me and I couldn't reach you when I could have helped you. I was left with all this distance, and now I come to you like this. And now Imam Hussein has to bring the body of Qasim back, and the enemies report that he took the body of Qasim and he pressed that broken chest along his own chest, and he dragged the feet of Qasim back to the
على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. ماتم حسين.
Ya Hussein. बानो कहाँ तलाश करे अपने लाल को, जंगल में मार डाला है ज़हरा की आल को, बानो कहाँ तलाश। शबीर ला रहे हैं मैदान से देखिए, शबीर ला रहे हैं मैदान से देखिए, اپنے ضعیف کاندھے پہ 18 سال کو بانو کہاں تلاش. اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا. کہ بابا میرے سینے میں سینہ ٹوٹ گئی ہے، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا. اس طرح کلیجے میں اتر آئی ہے برچھی، سینہ نہیں ارمان کی ماں کے زخمی. چاہا تھا میری ماں نے مجھے دولہا بنانا، کہ بابا میرے سینے میں سینہ ٹوٹ گئی ہے، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا. جی چاہتا ہے آپ کی تسلیم کو اٹھوں، رتبے کا تقاضا ہے کہ تعظیم کو اٹھوں. مشکل ہے مگر ہاتھ کلے جیسے ہٹانا، کہ بابا میرے سینے میں سینہ ٹوٹ گئی ہے، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا. میں جانتا ہوں ضد وہ بہت تم سے کرے گی، تنہا تمہیں زینب کبھی آنے نہیں دے گی. مقتل میں میری پالنے والی کو نہ لانا، کہ بابا میرے سینے میں سینہ ٹوٹ گئی ہے، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا. یہ سوچ کہ اکبر کا پھٹا جاتا ہے سینہ، آواز نہ سننے کہیں معصوم سکینہ. سجاد کو آہستہ ذرا جا کے بتانا، کہ بابا میرے سینے میں سینہ ٹوٹ گئی ہے، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا. اللہ کرے لوٹ کے تم جاؤ وطن کو، مجبوری آبائی کی بتا دینا بہن کو، تم میری طرف اسے سینے سے لگانا، کہ بابا میرے سینے میں سینہ ٹوٹ گئی ہے، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا، اماں کی نگاہوں سے میرا زخم چھپانا. قاتل نے سینہ توڑی تکلم یہی کہہ کر، سنتا ہے کہ صابر ہے بہت سے بیت پیمبر. اکبر نے کہا صبر کی میں راج دکھانا، कि बाबा मेरे सीने में से ना टूट गई है, अम्मा की निगाहों से मेरा ज़ख्म छुपाना। पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
अबा अब्दिल्ला अबा अब्दिल्ला अबा अब्दिल्ला अबा अब्दिल्ला. Know the Hussein of your time, know the Yazid of your time, know the Hussein of your time, know the Yazid of your time, follow the Hussein of your time, confront the Yazid of your time, follow the Hussein of your time, confront the Yazid of your time. Hussein, 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 Mola. Hussein, 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 Mola. Seek out the Hussein of your time. Reject the Yazid of your time. Seek out the Hussein of your time. Reject the Yazid of your time. Uphold the Hussein of your time. Oppose the Yazid of your time. Uphold the Hussein of your time. Oppose the Yazid of your time. Hussein, 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 Mola. Hussein, 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 Mola. Stand with the Hussein of your time. Defy the Yazid of your time. Stand with the Hussein of your time. Defy the Yazid of your time. Protect the Hussein of your time. Fight off the Yazid of your time. Protect the Hussein of your time. Fight off the Yazid of your time. Hussein, 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 Mola. Hussein, 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 Mola. Know the Hussein of your time. Know the Yazid of your time. Know the Hussein of your time. Know the Yazid of your time. Hussein of your time. Know the Yazid of your time. Know the Hussein of your time. Know the Yazid of your time. Hussein, 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 Mola. Hussein, 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 Mola. Ya Hussein.
Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah, Assalamu alayka ya Nabi Allah, Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Assalamu alayki ya Fatima Zahra, Sayyidata Nisa'il Alameen, Assalamu alayka ya Hasan al-Mujtaba, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah ya Sayyid al-Shuhada bi Karbala, Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala awlad al-Husayn wa ala ashab al-Husayn. السلام عليكم يا أئمة المعصومين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد موسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا حجة القائم بن حسن المهدي مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا.